everyone. Welcome to Healing for the Soul, the podcast. And also, I have a special guest on here today. Her name is Miracle Rogers, and she is a dancer and a life coach. And I have her here to just really tell the audience about what it is that what she does, and how dance can help us. So I'll let Miracle tell us more about what she does and her contact info to start.
Thank you, Robin. So my name is Miracle. I'm a life coach and a dancer. I'm currently a student for private studio teaching for dance. And through my life coaching, I help people that know that they are meant for more in life and they're ready to enlist help to achieve that. I help them to build new foundations and find their inner voice, to live the lives of their dreams. And through my dancing, um, I use that to teach others, help others, and for survival, really. Dance is pretty much my entire life.
Oh,
Um, and I can be reached on Instagram at the Miracle Rogers. My website is also themiraclerogers.com, to keep it simple and easy for everyone.
that's awesome. First off, I really like your name. So I
Thank
think
you.
that's awesome to be able to, you don't have to like dress anything up to do anything special. You just got like one of those names that everybody likes. And sorry, I got my dog.
Thank you. I get that
Uh,
all the time.
which is really nice if you really think about it for business, which helps. But then overall, it's like this is what you get to do too for the life coach and for the dancing part. So, what type of dance is it that you offer?
So I focus on contemporary and creative movement. Creative movement is also known as improv, um, and kind of winging it by people that don't really dance as a study or as a focus.
So then, what is the contemporary dance?
So contemporary, it pulls from different types of dance. It pulls some elements of ballet, um, like the leg work and strength. It pulls from improv, kind of that fluidity and improvisation through movement. But contemporary has a focus around like fluidity in movement, and then also like contract release, floor work, suspension and release, uh, gravity, and like playing with the weight within our bodies, and things like that.
So is it like when you say about like the gravity and weight? I'm thinking like the trapeze artists, that like you would see at a circus. So is it kind of
Yeah.
like that for like the gravity play or not?
Um, a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of one thing that we do. One of my classes is the funniest thing ever. I walk into class and they're like, "Today we're going to be falling." And that a good part of, yeah, I know that's the face that we usually get, but a good part of that is learning how to fall safely, and kind of like the rebound off the ground. So using the floor and using your weight to safely fall and get back up. Um, so yeah, in a sense, yeah, it's using your weight, kind of, tossing your weight around, playing with like the lightness in your weight, the heaviness in your weight, and using it to your advantage, especially like in partner work. That's a good element there, because a lot of times with like lifts and things like that, or like weight sharing, it makes it easier. So as complex as it looks, um, it's not as bad. Like there have been times where I've lifted, or I've weight shared with people that were like so much bigger than me, but because of that, like knowing how to play with weight and how to work with it, it makes it look complicated but feel easy.
Oh, I've never heard of that. So that's why I'm like, that sounds really interesting. Like when you break it down for like the weight sharing part of it? Because to me, I'm like, well, I'm not exactly light either, but I'm like, that sounds really interesting as far as falling safely. I've never heard of that. Because me, like when I
Yeah.
fall, I basically fall and I get hurt. But
Yeah.
then like the weight sharing, that's really interesting. Like, how is it kind of like water then? Like, as far as like, so like when we're in water, we're lighter, we're able to move easier. So is it kind of like that with the weight sharing as far as being able to feel that?
In a sense, yeah. In a sense, with some things I've done, it's all about navigating through it properly. So when you're when you're doing it the right way, essentially the proper way, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do, then it ends up feeling a lot easier. Say if you're like lifting someone, it feels a lot easier. Or also the reverse. It could be used like there are different things that make it harder to lift someone. Like we did that in class once. It was a friend of mine. The easiest person in the world to lift, but because of this certain position, if you try to lift them, it's so much harder because it's just kind of like manipulating those different elements. And with falling safely, that's very important, especially in contemporary, because there's a lot of floor work that doesn't always show up in other elements of or other genres of dance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so with that floor work, you have to know how to get down there safely and how to get back up from it safely to like prevent injuries. It also smoothens the aesthetic and how it looks. Um, so yeah, the knowledge of that and the knowledge of like the use of weight plays a large part in contemporary specifically, and same with like modern and quite a few other styles of dance, really.
That's interesting. It's
Yeah,
like I never would have thought of all of that goes into dance because like one of the things I'm sure you get asked quite a bit, especially like for on this Healing for the Soul podcast. I'm just thinking to myself is why should anyone care about dance, especially for like themselves and or their kids? Because I know like
yeah,
there's Just for Kicks is one that I heard in Minnesota that I know of, but it's like where does it fall like in the importance level, and like I said, why should anyone really care about dance?
yeah, for sure. That is a big question that we in the dance world get from people outside of the dance world. It's a big thing that we face too. But it's very important in so many various ways. It it provides benefits physically, mentally, emotionally, and I can go into depth on those. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but even just thinking about like even from a non-studying dance standpoint, think about like any celebrations you've went to, any weddings or any like parties, anything like that. And then think about the ones that you went to where like no one was dancing and how awkward that may have been, or maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't quite as yeah, like maybe it wasn't quite as fun, or maybe you were just kind of wondering, like, maybe it felt like something was missing, and that something is dance. So even from the non like studying dance viewpoint, dance shows up in people's lives in so many various ways. Um, but as far as it plays a part mentally, physically, and emotionally in a lot of ways, because like physically, it's like exercise, which a lot of people forget. Um,
Yeah.
and I say, yeah, like I say that's because dance is so fun that, of course, like when you're dancing, you're not going to think about like the same way as if you were like, weightlifting, unless like, weightlifting is what you do and what you love. Um, but you tell most people that don't really exercise and stuff like that to go to the gym, and they'd be like but like you asked them to dance with you, and they're like okay, because it's not seen as that, but it has quite a bit of the same physical benefits, and it also releases those endorphins. It helps like stimulate the release of like dopamine and things like that, which then kind of slip into that like mental, like, and how like emotional and like those benefits. So from that physical benefit of like being active, getting your body moving, um, those components, it also um, stimulates the release of those the happy chemicals in our brain,
Yes.
which are like is mood boosting. But aside from like just boosting your mood, dancing, it's used in a lot of other ways as well, with like emotionally and like mentally. It has a lot of benefits um, because dance is used often to communicate ideas and also emotions. And that kind of promotes an emotional intelligence because, you know, being in tune with your emotions enough to, yeah, I know.
That's what I'm like,
But
how does that work?
yeah, so like if you use dance as a means of expressing
Mhm.
yourself and expressing your emotions, then you're able to like it helps facilitate the process of pinpointing what those emotions are, or at least getting them out. Um, Whereas, you know, if you weren't dancing and if you weren't able to communicate your emotions verbally or in any other way aside from dance, then that would have just stayed inside. But dance provides yet another way to express those emotions, express those thoughts and ideas, um, which contributes to the health in that. And it also provides a lot of developmental benefits, which is something that like I've studied a lot this past year. The developmental benefits of dance. I would say starting dance at a young age, it helps facilitate the process of like autonomy, because the elements of dance involve like, you know, space and like how you show up in a space, time, you know, body awareness and things like that. And through that body awareness and like learning how you show up in a space, that helps facilitate that like autonomy, that control over your body, the learning about your body and the interconnectedness. um, it helps with, like I said, emotions, self-expression. It helps with learning about other people and how you interact with other people through like partner work, things like that. There are a lot of benefits with improv dance and expression because, you know, improv, a lot of it comes from just, you know, kind of making things up on the spot per se, um, just to put it like, you know, simplified. And
That's what I
through
was
that,
wondering.
yeah, like through that improv, which is also called creative movement, which is like very appropriate,
Mhm.
which is a very appropriate name for it. That creative movement involves a great level of creativity and a great level of thinking outside of the box and getting your brain moving. It's also a nice little challenge to move in ways different from the ways that you typically move. And that's something as a dancer, like if you're training all your life and then you get thrown into an improv class, it's also kind of scary for us as dancers, because then we have to move in ways, we're challenged to move in ways differently from how we normally move. Um, so it helps in that sense developmentally of like learning, you know, creative thinking, thinking outside the box, problem solving, because sometimes in dance you get these like, I can't think of the word right now, but like almost like guidelines. So they say like, you know, incorporate this, move, figure out how you can take this movement and, you know, fit these like little check boxes, like make it slower, see how you can make it high and like elevated, in the space and things like that. So that almost kind of gives you a word like problem solving,
Mhm.
um, and rerouting or like rethinking of ways to do things.
Like the
Um,
critical thinking skills.
yeah, critical thinking. I
Okay.
could not find the word for that. Yes, critical thinking. Um, it sharpens those. Like I said, autonomy, self-expression, that emotional, like learning how to communicate your emotions, learning how to communicate in general. Like I said, with partner work, you have to have a certain degree of trust when you're working with a partner. You have to trust in them to, you know, work with you, catch you if that's what's happening. They have to trust you. So there's that communication there. The list just kind of goes on and on for different benefits of dance.
It sounds like it, because yeah, I know like that's like whenever I think about, like I said, the trapeze work, you know, at the fairs and stuff that I've, well, like the carnivals and fairs, when they're doing those things, I'm like, that would take a lot of trust that the other person is going to catch you, like 100%. I cannot imagine, like I've seen it, but I'm like, I can't imagine myself, like even if I was a lot skinnier in weight, like I can't imagine like the amount of trust you have to have in that other person that they're going to catch you and not let you fall. Like that's got to take an unbelievable amount of trust just to do those movements, just to have them catch you. And it's not even like the ones in the air, but I'm sure it's, like, I'm just thinking like if a person runs and jumps and then they have to catch you when you're dancing. Because I'm like thinking almost like a ballet type
Yeah,
where you're being caught, and that's got to take a lot of skill. Like how often do you have to practice just to be able to do that, like the catch part of it, and then not even like the catch, but like really those movements? Is it like a almost like a full-time job just like practicing, or like where do kids start at in this?
for sure, for sure. So a couple of things with that, as far as dancing and like, how often do you practice? All the time, always. You kind of, when it comes to dance and things like that, and like especially if you're going into like a uh, professional dancing, you're always, dance is always a practice. And from your performance is not the end of, say, like you're practicing for a performance. You don't stop practicing just because the performance is done. Like you can always evolve, you can always grow from whatever it is. Yeah, you can always grow, you can always get better, you can always improve at whatever it is. It's like with anything in life. If you set a goal for yourself, you
True.
don't stop doing whatever it is just because, oh, I checked off my goal. Like you look at your goal, you're
True.
like, okay, well, how can I do that better? Yeah, right. And that's also goes along with like understanding the importance of dance and the significance of dance is that it's a real thing. It's here. It provides all these benefits. It's a job, as much as like anything else for anyone else. And as far as when people start dancing, that kind of the ideal, like, in the dance world, you want to start dancing young. However, I also want to speak on the fact that it is never too late to start dancing. I started dancing my senior year of high school, which is incredibly late. Technically, it's viewed as incredibly late as a dancer. You would think of professional dancers or people starting, going into being a professional dancer or a teacher, and you would think like, oh, you must have been dancing since you were like 3 years old. Um, and, that's not true for a lot of people. There are tons of dancers that started when they were in like late high school, college, things like that. One of my instructors started in college, didn't even know anything about dance until college. So it's like never too late to start dancing. It's ideal to start young, but it also works very well to start quote unquote, quote unquote later on. um, yeah.
That's interesting because it's like, yeah, and the most that I'm thinking was like a lot of the kids they do start young. That I'm like thinking of that I know that we're in like the just for kicks and things like that. Like they always start young, and I'm like, why would you start young? And then I got to thinking too, is it seem more like a discipline? So like they have like taekwondo, and they've got these different skills that are like that. Is that going to be similar as far as not just like the mindset part of it, like when you're doing the dance, but is it seen more as like you're disciplining your body in those movements and in having that more of that mental status as far as being focused, or is it going to be more of the just just for an art form?
Yeah. So dance is definitely, I would say, is excellent in the discipline sense. Um, and truthfully, with any art form, I think that's as an artist, I think that's one of the reasons why the arts end up being so underrated because they're seen as like, oh, the arts, it's just, they're seen as
Yeah.
extra, as like, frills and things. Whereas the arts and like dance specifically, I can speak on, but it has a lot of that like discipline components to it. With dance, you learn more about your body and you grow your bodily awareness, which has tons of health benefits to it, things like that. And like knowing your body, knowing how to check in with your body. In this past year of like, really buckling down with dancing and like learning more about my body, I feel almost like, I might hear like, a med student talking or something, and I'm like, oh, I kind of understand like a little bit of what you're saying because I know so much more about my body now. Not at all saying that I'm like close to a med student, but it provides like benefits in that sense. So like in the discipline sense, I would definitely say yes, because of that, like learning about your body, learning how your body shows up in the space, like I said. And it promotes like awareness of your body in non-dance settings too, with like posture, alignment, energy too. That's one thing with dance is like, and one of the elements of dance is like energy and like force and things like that. With contemporary, it's like extending beyond your body like into the space and things like that.
Okay.
So I would say like especially for me personally, like that has shown up in other areas of my life, from having that sharpened through dance and having that focused on through dance. It strengthens it so that way things like that it shows up in other areas of my life, like with my life coaching, and like the energetics of it. I have an understanding of that and how that works from dance and like learning about that within my body and like alignment of my body and things like that. So definitely it is definitely a discipline. And as far as usually starting as like a child, like from a young age, it's really good in that sense because you get to train your body. So kind of like, get to where, I don't really know how I would word that, but it's definitely more time of training your body, in this discipline and kind of, growing up through it and into it, versus, at a later age teaching yourself. Although at a later age, it still is very ideal. It still is very learnable. There have been said some benefits of starting at a later age because you don't have to unlearn any techniques that were poorly learned growing up or things like that. Yeah.
I never would have thought of that, but then I suppose it's like when you think about like the skills that are poorly learned, I think about like the chicken dance. I don't know why I just thought of that, but like I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like one of those you just do whatever. But I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure.
But is a chicken dance ever poorly learned? I feel like we all need the chicken dance.
True, like, I think that's why they play that at like every wedding.
As a dancer, like I feel like you need the chicken dance. Like you gotta have it. Where would we be in life if not for the chicken dance?
True. That is true because I'm just like that's just like the one thing I just like all of a sudden I'm like I was thinking about the chicken dance and it's like is it even possible though to like learn something poorly like when it comes to body movement? Because I'm just like like how it is.
When I say like learn techniques poorly, that one I mean in the professional dance sense and the technique in dance sense, like say for ballet, turnout. Most of your turnout should be coming from your hips, your hip flexors. However, some people, especially like people that haven't grown up in dance, they they turn, and by turnout I mean like when your feet are turned out. I've seen quite a few people, like friends even, they're like, oh, like I can do that, and a lot of that turnout is coming from their knee and like below their knee, which can be very dangerous. Yeah, a lot of people like because. And it's possible to like have a certain amount of turnout from your knee to like turn it out more, but a lot of times that's forced, which is very dangerous. It puts you at risk for injuries. Your knee is not meant to do that. And there is very slight turnout that comes from your knee, but it should be coming from your hips. Like you should be feeling it in your hips. So like say a technique like that, like if someone doesn't know that, if someone doesn't grow up knowing that dancing, like in ballet, although, I mean, if they're dancing in ballet and if they're training in ballet, I don't really know many ways that they wouldn't know that, but say, for example, if that's one, or like your port de bras, your arms, like how those are held and like where they're held from, things like that. Um, that's what I mean by like improperly learned or improperly taught or things like that. Say, if you start dancing when you're older, then it's a chance to not have to unlearn those things from childhood and like growing up, and things like that, because you're starting mature adult, like, okay, like, and then you can learn and be a little bit more aware of that, versus like starting as a really, really young child and then like learning about your body and also learning how to do this, things like that. So it's like both work between like learning as a young child and learning once you're older and things like that.
That's good to know, because it's like now I'm thinking, well, can I even dance? Because I'm like, because I've had to have hip surgery done twice. I've never on the same hip. We won't go there too much, but I'm just like thinking to myself, because I've had to work specifically on being able to rotate my hip properly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much because like when I fell, I'm like, okay, so I know that I'm really flexible, like more than most adults are, but I'm also thinking, like when you said about like the rotation of the hip, that does take a lot of work to rebuild that muscle, not just after surgery, but I mean, like, it takes a lot to be able to rotate that. So I can't imagine when a person would do that with their knees, because I've had surgery on both my knees too when I was a kid. I'm just like thinking that would hurt a lot more to try to bend your knee or like rotate it, because it's not meant for that. It really is the hip. So that's got to be a lot of hip work too at the same time. So would
Yeah.
like dance even benefit somebody like myself, even have after having surgery? Or is that one of those
Of course.
things to
No,
shy away from?
no, of course. And that's the thing about dance. A lot of times when people view dance like like a lot of times when people view dance, it's viewed in that professional sense and it's viewed in the Western sense, like the Western styles of dance. So a lot of people think about like ballet, or
Yeah.
some people might think about like tap and like hip hop or modern things like that. But there are so many different styles and types of dance out there. There are so many different ways to dance. Like being a dancer doesn't mean that you're a professional ballerina and things like that. Like there are so many ways to dance. Dance is used in a therapeutic sense, like dance therapy. I know like not a lot of people know that that's a thing, but I would encourage anyone listening or watching to look up dance therapy, and what that's used for. um, but dance goes a long way, and so yeah, there are lots of different ways that you can dance. And a big component of that is listening to your body and listening to what your body is saying yes to and what your body is saying no to. So if you have any physical things going on that like maybe this move you don't want to do, or maybe it doesn't feel right within your body, that's fine, don't do it. There are lots of like ways that you can move your body, like um, back in December, I had leg surgery. I couldn't, just stand and dance the normal type of dance that I usually do. And I was like going insane, and it had only been like a week. Um, but I still danced. There's a whole upper body you have. Like, say, even if you can't move
True.
your legs, or even if, you can't move your hips or something like that, you have so many components to your body. And the last time I checked, we all have a torso. Or like, even
True.
if say even if you can't move your torso, you can, like, if you can move your head, like there's so many different ways to dance and to get your body moving. So I would encourage everyone to do it. I mean, I would encourage everyone to try it. And that doesn't mean like, oh, go enroll yourself in dance classes. I mean, hey, do that too. But um, dance, like I said, it's one of those things where you wouldn't notice it unless it was like, some people may not notice it unless it was gone. But I guarantee you, if you took dance out of the world, I think things would be a whole lot more gray.
I think so. Because, yeah, especially like the chicken dance.
Yeah, I mean, you take out the chicken dance, the whole world might fall apart.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, like it's crazy, like, because I'm even thinking like at weddings, like how even before a person gets married, they're still dancing with their partner. They're still
yeah,
doing those different things, and then even like at the wedding, there's dancing, but even at that, it's like I do understand like the benefits of dance because like I know when we were talking prior to today, I'm just like, well, even with dance, it's like one of those things that I'm just like, is it even exercise? And I'm like, wait a minute, no, it is exercise.
yeah,
But a person really doesn't ever stop and think of those things.
yeah. Because once you get in a groove, it's like, it's not like trying to lift like, 50, 100 pounds. Like you're moving your body, things like that. Um, but yeah, and another thing I want to say is you don't have to be a professional dancer to dance. You don't have to be interested in dancing professional to dance, right? Like, I'd say like if someone were looking to sign up for a class, like try out
Mm-hmm.
improv, look into creative movement, like for you or your child or some things like that. Looking into creative movement. If you want like a more structured experience around dance, but not too structured. I mean, I took it
Mm-hmm.
last year as one of my classes, and it was probably one of the most fun classes I've had. And it's once you really get into it, it's just this whole other experience. So yeah, you don't have to be a professional dancer to dance and to enjoy dance and love dance.
Well, that's very helpful and good to know. So, what's like the best way for the audience to be able to get a hold of you? Just one more time, so where they're able to get a hold of you in case they do want to enroll in dance or they do have more questions, because obviously I can't answer them and you can. So, what would be the best contact info for you? And then, what time zone are you in?
Yes. So I'm in Central Time Zone, Central Standard Time. I'm in Minnesota. And the best way to contact me, I would say, is through Instagram. My Instagram is the Miracle Rogers. And I would love to answer any questions about dance. I'd love to talk about dance. Quite honestly, I could talk about it for hours. So feel free, to send me a DM. If you have any questions, if you need any advice around dance, or life in general. Like I said, I'm also a life coach. I do lots of work around that. Again, my Instagram is at the Miracle Rogers. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on here. I really appreciate your time and your energy, of course, because I'm sure this takes a break from your dancing world, but I really appreciate it. And it's great being
Yeah.
able to have you talk about the dance that you do and everything. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved being here.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks.